Well, I know that one area that you are very interested in, very passionate about, that we didn't really hear too much about anymore is mid-century modern, like design. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, and I know, and also Ray Eames. I know you're very passionate about Ray. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about just, tell us a bit about your interest in mid-century modern, maybe when that sort of became a focus. And also I want to hear about your book a little bit, which I have not read, so consider an advertisement, your author talk here, uh, to reel me in and do
Oh,
that reading.
okay. Book plug. Okay, I'm here for that. Oh, I when I think back, I think I've really loved mid-century modern all my life. And I first realized how fascinated I was by Ray when I was, I think, about 16. And the Library of Congress had a exhibition on the world of Charles and Ray Eames. And my mother took me to see it. And she had actually heard them speak when she was in architecture school in California. And because she trained as an
Hmm.
architect, and design is really has deep roots in my family. My grandfather, who I never was able to know in person, he loved modern design. He built a very, beautifully designed, you know, completely avant-garde modern design house in the Bay Area in California. And it just, I only learned that, a long time after I was so drawn to that style myself. So it's interesting what stays in us without us realizing. And so my mother had, she actually heard Ray speak when she was a student in architecture school. And so she saw in the paper that this exhibition was at the Library of Congress. And so she took me into the city one weekend, and that was it. I was obsessed. That was the end for me. And, Charles is fine. Like, no shade to Charles, but for Ray was who I really connected with, because I think she was passionate about so many things as well, that it helped me latch onto, oh, there were people who were wired like I am, where she was, a painter and a sculptor and studied music and dance. She took ballet with Martha Graham for years and years, and just loved theater and film, and just is completely multi-passionate, creative Renaissance person. And that scene, particularly her material culture, it's always kind of through the objects, where there was one display in this exhibition, and I can still see it, decades later, like it was yesterday, where they had raised drawers, and it was this big cabinet and kind of a flat file, and you would pull out the drawers, and there were things that she found visually inspiring that she had collected, like ribbons or just beautiful little pieces of ephemera, but they all aesthetically ignited creativity for her. And they had glass tops that they had put on these drawers, and so you could see them and kind of see her world and what her the inside of her imagination. And that was it. I was like, I just, I need to learn everything I can about this person, because it felt in a way like it was helping me better learn about myself. And when I got so I, already a teenager, I was obsessed with Ray Eames. And this was sort of, people weren't really talking that much about Eames then. This was before modern design became popular. This was before the Mad Men
Hmm.
show. Long before everybody was like, "Yeah, modern design. You like modern design? What's with that?"
Yeah.
Everybody's still into period furniture at that point.
Brown wood was still king. Yeah.
Yeah, Brownwood was king. And so when I got accepted into college at William and Mary, they had this thing called the Monroe Scholars Program, which they gave you $2,000 to do a research project of your design. And so I took that money, and I spent 4 years, going to the Library of Congress studying her papers in person, because she donated her archive and the Eames office archive to the Library of Congress, so it would be available for researchers like me. And I wanted to focus on her personal archive specifically before she met Charles, because there's, everybody likes to argue who did what. And I thought, I don't really want to even wade into that. Like, that's not what I'm interested in. I want to see, well, what did she bring to the table? Like, what were her influences? What were her passions? And so I focused on the era of time in her personal archive before she ever met Charles, so I could learn about her. And it
Hmm.
was a great period of time. I mean, I felt like I got to just teleport myself sitting in the manuscript reading room at the Library of Congress, because it kept everything. baby
Mhm.
teeth, look at all every theater program she ever went to, all her
Wow.
notes from Hans Hofmann, her handwritten notes, sketches.
Mhm.
She wrote her mother every day, and so all the really, really good stuff, was not included in that. Like I didn't get any of the juicy details about what was
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
on in her private life, but it was, it was almost like a diary of things one would tell one's mother in a letter at
Mhm.
least.
Mhm.
And to that was just such a beautiful experience. I would go in the summers and sit there. And I also am violently allergic to mold that's on old
Mm.
manuscripts. So I,
Mhm.
would be have like a permanent sinus infection all the time I was
Oof.
doing.
Yeah. Mhm.
But for my senior year, that was when we had to do this project. Well, actually, no, I did a presentation before that, but I wrote my honors thesis, my undergraduate honors thesis on Ray Eames and her time in New York in the 1930s, which became the foundation of my book later that I later published. And it was it was such an honor to be able to go, she left these papers there so that somebody could go learn her story someday. And
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
are many researchers and scholars doing great work on the Eameses, so I'm certainly not the only one, but I feel really honored that I got to just kind of sit and have a conversation with her across time,
Yeah.
and then be able to share her story, which
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
eventually did in the form of my book, which yeah, is available through the website for sale for anyone who's interested. And I'll have to send you an author copy.
That's great. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. So how well, besides mid-century modern, I know you're interested in everything, what's number 2? What's another high-ranking sort of era art or design or, deck arts or,
Art,
what's one that you're, um, reading about in your free time, you know?
art, absolutely art. Yeah,
Mhm.
like you, paintings and art are a deep, deep love of mine. And so that's what I was begging to go see as a little kid. Like, please take me to go and see the paintings. So I love art, all eras, but the 20th century is kind of my wheelhouse. That's, oh gosh, I could just geek out about that endlessly. And I really love silver too. That was
Mhm.
I about 2012 was when I got serious about learning how to appraise silver, because I my colleague at the time at the auction house was a silver specialist, and so it felt like magic to see her, hold up these pieces and be like, "Oh, this is from London and this is from, 1853 and it was by this maker." And I'm like, "How do you know all these things?"
Mm,
So
mhm, mhm,
that began my journey, taking classes on how to learn how to read silver and decipher that. And it's kind of
mhm,
like a secret code once you know how to read it, and it's different for each country. And
mhm, mhm,
then I do a lot of appraising of silver now, so that's a great kind of area of specialization in the business. And in addition to all of the other things we appraise and being a generalist. And then a couple of years ago, I created a silver course on for people on how to identify their silver. So that's been another area that I really enjoy. And silver is a very satisfying object in a tactile perspective to appraise. Just holding it, it's beautiful. It has a different center of gravity than most objects. And so I like how it's actually quite similar to paintings, because they're these very personal handmade creations that
mhm,
someone who was incredibly skilled made with their
mhm,
hands, usually, often
mhm,
hundreds of years ago. And here you are holding it, reading the messages that they left.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I imagine the process of silver. I mean, they're probably working with sort of molds, but also, sort of chasing or whatever they do on the product and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff. That's
a
that's
lot of
great.
finished work. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then, modern design beyond just Ray. I love that entire era, and
Mm, mhm,
20th century design in general. I love. I mean, this is where my own wiring on accomplishing a positive
mm,
outcome through design
mhm,
is
mhm,
really important to me. And the history of modernism is now everybody just, they see, oh, here's the status Eames lounge that the hedge fund pro has.
mhm,
But
mhm,
there was so much more to it originally. It was coming from a very you know deeply progressive place, really thinking about how can we make the world better through these
Hmm.
designs that we create. Like a lot of modernism was based on reducing disease and, not
Mm.
having germs on surfaces, and how can things be made inexpensively so that they're available to more people at a better price point. There's this great interview with Ray, actually, where she's complaining about how the prices got hiked up on some of their designs over the years. She's like, I can't even afford this piece, and I made it. So
That's
I
so funny.
the whole era of design beyond just the Eameses and Knoll and the European designers and all the other American designers. I love that stuff. Danish modern. I could geek out about that all day long.
Absolutely. Yeah. All good stuff. And that's really interesting. I feel like you're making a connection between modernism and modernization and
Yes.
all the positive aspects of all these things. Yeah, it's really um, an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, and that's something I get frustrated about sometimes with the scholarly focus on just kind of guarding the legacy of these designers, where to me, their biggest legacy was they were endlessly creative. They were making new things. They never stopped moving
Mm-hmm.
forward with what can I do in my imagination that's going to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish something positive. And so
Mm.
while I love studying all the details of their lives and their designs, for me, the part that I find most precious in their legacy is how can I then apply what they did to my life to make things myself? And that I wish the field could expand more that way. That's something that is very much well, it's pretty typical for why I was not suited for the academic world. It's the same thing. But I just get so excited about what good can I design and create.
That's great. That's great. Okay, well, I guess taking us more into the modern era of everything Sarah Reader. Um, I guess well, because you do, you have your appraisal business, and I know you do attached to that some, consulting work.
Mhm.
You also are involved in magazine publishing, Worthwhile Magazine. You also have a podcast, and you're. I know you're active in um, some of the appraisal associations. I mean, how do you approach? That's a lot of stuff to my mind. That's a lot of stuff to be involved in and have your fingers on. I guess how do you balance it all? What's the you know how do you handle being involved in all that interesting stuff?
Short answer is I balance it all very badly.
Okay.
But oh, I mean, and I think, yeah, there's definitely a running theme that I'm passionate about many things, and I'm happiest when I can be involved in many things. And I definitely approach them in a seasonal way. Like, sometimes if things are really busy and one of, with the magazine or with podcasts, I might not be initiating a bunch of new projects in one of the other areas, or at least that's ideal. And quite frankly, yeah, the running of the appraisal business takes most of the focus, most of the time. But yeah, as I alluded in my high school, literary magazine editor days, I've always loved magazines. I actually worked on the literary magazine at William and Mary too, so it's just
Hmm.
been a through line through my life. And then in 2018, I co-founded Worthwhile Magazine, which is a free online magazine and publishes articles from lots of different contributors about praising, collecting, art, connoisseurship. And the impetus for creating that was that I was really frustrated about the lack of knowledge that was available about appraising, particularly to people who might need an appraisal. And I thought if this knowledge can be made freely accessible, there's not a paywall, people can just Google and find it, then I was hoping that organically it would help shape the field for the better, and help appraisers get more business because they're going to have an informed clientele, and also help people who need an appraisal report better understand what do they need so that they can research and find the right appraiser for them. So that's been a really interesting journey. That's, yeah, worthwhilemagazine.com. It's free. The whole archives are up there. And then I am co-host of the Art Elevator podcast with my good friend and fellow appraiser Larissa Wild, who's based in Colorado. And that's a fun story. I joined more recently as the co-host. The whole podcast idea and concept and creation is full credit goes to Larissa. She started the podcast, and I was actually an early guest on the podcast. So that's
Mhm.
how we first met, and now she's a dear friend. So that all my
You
multi
just didn't want to leave. You said, "Well,
yeah,
yeah, okay."
I
Yeah.
didn't want to leave. Well, we kept yeah, she got COVID shortly after she interviewed me. This was like
Mm,
the height of the pandemic, and so she was looking to see for a guest host to fill in for her while she was, literally in the
mm.
hospital. And so I thought,
Oh,
oh,
geez.
I'll do it. I'll just wing it. I'll make it up as I go. And so
Mhm.
that's how we found out we really liked working together. And I don't know, I just kind of never really left. We had a lot of a lot of repeat episodes, and then finally Larissa's like, "Do you want to just make this official?" And so now it's official. But yeah, she really had the thought of the concept of the podcast and
Mhm. Mhm.
created the infrastructure, which there's a lot of behind the scenes infrastructure to host and publish a podcast. It's amazing.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, that credit goes to her for that. I just get to show up and do the fun part. But so
That's fantastic. That's amazing.
yeah, and for the associations, I actually am a certified member of the Appraisers Association of America, and I'm also a certified member of the International Society of Appraisers. And additionally, the International Society of Appraisers has something called the Private Client Services Designation, which was an extra training program with extra requirements. And I did that too. So that's training for kind of working specifically with high net worth clients, which we do in the firm. So yeah, I do a lot of things. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how I do it all.
Yeah. Well, you certainly, yeah. Um, you keep busy, so that's great. And
Yeah. Oh, and
it's,
that was I also with the consulting, I do
mhm.
historic consulting, and I have a great team. My good friends and colleagues, Mira Goodman and Max Kaplan, and so those are really interesting projects where we advise on what a house or a museum or a recreated space would look like in a particular year, and this is
Mhm.
where my connoisseurship comes in really handy because it's like, oh, the light switch in this year in the 1940s would have looked like this. And here, let me source this for you. Here's how you can get one that looks just like it. Or the furniture in this house with this particular historical figure who would have been living there with their known taste would
Mm,
have been
mhm.
this, which is interesting because at a particular year in time, a lot of things might be historically accurate, but the part that I really enjoy is that psychological overlay where
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
is the right thing for the person who was supposed to be living there.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing I do too.
That's great. That's great. And tell us about Mira. Introduce us to Mira.
Yeah, Mira is my beloved dog. Let me see if she's gonna make a cameo.
Okay.
We'll have the Lion King moment here. Here we go. This is Mira. Yes.
Hey, Mira.
She is a Chihuahua, and I adopted her from a local rescue group called Homeward Trails, which does some really wonderful work in Northern Virginia, where they pull dogs out of kill shelters in rural areas, and then their volunteers drive them up. And so one of their volunteers pulled Mira on her last day and
Mm.
drove her 3 hours up, and
Oh,
then
wow.
had 10 beautiful years together thanks to that. And so yeah, she's the love of my
That's
life.
great. Yeah.
And she's right there sleeping for pretty much every meeting I have, so or phone call I've had. So any client who's ever had a meeting with me, remotely, Mira was there too.
That's great. That's great. So she knows everything. She's this. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the company mascot.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. We could put Mira on the logo, like curled up on the chair
Yes.
or, or something. Yeah.
Yeah, she'd like that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
she's the queen of my photo roll as well.
That's great.
Pretty much all Mira photos all the time.
That's